Warren Cole was 44 years old when his wife of 14 years sat across from him at their kitchen table and slid a document across the marble surface he'd chosen himself. She wanted $100,000 a month, tax-free, deposited directly into a private account he hadn't known existed until 5 days ago. No questions asked, or she'd file for divorce. She said it with the composure of a woman who had been rehearsing that moment for a very long time. She was expecting panic, negotiation, the desperate compliance of a man too in love to think clearly. What she was not expecting was silence. And then, a laugh. Quiet. Genuine. The kind that doesn't perform anything. Warren picked up the document, looked at it one more time, folded it, and handed it back to her. Then he asked if she was eating breakfast. Diane stared at him like he'd spoken another language. She thought his laugh meant he had nothing. She thought his calm meant she had already won. She had no idea that the man sitting across from her had spent the last 5 days uncovering a betrayal so deep it had roots in a life she'd been building long before she ever said, "I do." And that laugh, the one she mistook for weakness, was the last mistake she would ever make. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The steel beam swung 40 feet above K Street, suspended from a crane cable no thicker than a man's wrist. Warren Cole watched it rise, blueprints rolled in his left hand, hard hat catching the late morning sun. He didn't flinch, he never did. "Column line 7, he said to Marcus, his site foreman. 3 inches east. Marcus nodded, relayed the adjustment into his radio, and the beam shifted. It settled into position like a bone finding its socket. Perfect. This was the Meridian Project, a 12-story mixed-use development in northwest D.C. that would hold 42 residential units above a ground-floor marketplace. One of 3 active builds under Cole & Associates, Warren's firm. His name on the permits, his signature on the drawings, his reputation holding up the financing. He moved through the site the way he moved through everything. With economy. No wasted steps. No wasted words. The crew respected him for it. They'd watched him climb scaffolding in a suit jacket to check a weld point 2 weeks ago. And before that, they'd seen him stay until midnight on a Friday to help resolve a foundation drainage issue that wasn't technically his problem. Warren Cole didn't ask his people to do things he wouldn't do himself. That was the rule. Had been since the beginning, when Cole & Associates was just Warren and a drafting table crammed into a 400-square-foot studio apartment in Pigtown, Baltimore. No associates, no clients, just a 26-year-old kid with a design fellowship from Howard, and the kind of stubbornness that either builds empires or kills you. It built an empire. He checked his watch. 3:45. He handed Marcus the rolled blueprints, clapped him on the shoulder, and walked to his truck. A black Denali that still smelled faintly of sawdust because he refused to stop loading materials into it himself when a delivery ran short. The drive from D.C. to Potomac took 38 minutes. Warren used it the way he always did, in silence. No radio, no podcast, just the hum of the engine and the slow unwinding of the professional mind, making room for whatever waited at home. The house appeared through a corridor of mature oaks, set back 300 feet from the road, on 2.5 acres of landscaped property. Georgian brick, custom millwork, a roofline that managed to feel both grand and restrained, because Warren had drawn it that way. Every angle, every proportion, every sightline was his. He'd designed this home the way he designed everything to last. He pulled into the garage and entered through the mudroom, set his keys on the hook, hung his jacket. Diane was in the kitchen. She stood at the island with a glass of sparkling water, wearing a cream silk blouse tucked into tailored trousers, gold at her ears and wrists, full makeup, hair blown out and falling past her shoulders in a way that looked effortless and cost $300 every 2 weeks to maintain. It was 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. "Hey, baby," she smiled. Warm, practiced. "How was your day?" "Good," Warren said. He kissed her cheek. She smelled like bergamot and something floral he couldn't name. "Meridian's ahead of schedule." "That's wonderful." She turned back to her phone. Her thumb moved across the screen, then stopped. She set it face down on the counter. "I was thinking salmon for dinner. That okay?" "Sounds good." They ate at 7. The salmon was perfect, pan-seared, skin crispy, served on a bed of wild rice Diane had learned from a cooking class she'd taken last spring. The conversation moved across familiar, shallow ground. A gala next month. A landscaper who'd overcharged. A friend of Diane's whose daughter was applying to Georgetown. Warren listened, nodded, asked the right questions, noticed, somewhere beneath the surface of his attention, that Diane's eyes never quite settled on his, that her laughter arrived a half-beat too late, that the warmth in her voice had the texture of something rehearsed rather than felt. He noticed, and as he always did, he let it pass. 14 years of marriage had taught him that not every silence meant something, that people were allowed their distances. He was wrong about that, but he didn't know it yet. At 10:15, Warren carried a manila folder from the kitchen to his home office. Quarterly projections Diane had offered to print for him earlier that week. He set it on his desk, and the folder slipped open. A page slid out that didn't belong. A credit card statement. 1 page. Diane's name printed at the top. An account number he had never seen. Warren sat down slowly. He read it the way he read structural reports, line by line, without skipping ahead. The Belmont Charleston Place, Fort High $200. The mansion on Forsyth Park, Savannah, $3,800. Tiffany & Co. earned $7,150. A private charter service based in Fort Lauderdale, Fort Dulles. A resort in Nassau, $6,100. Smaller charges scattered between restaurants, spa treatments, a wine shop in the historic district, $43,000. 90 days. All of it during the 3 weekends Diane had told him she was visiting her sister in Atlanta. Warren stared at the statement for a long time. The numbers didn't blur. They stayed sharp, precise, undeniable, the way structural failures always look on paper once you finally see them. He closed the folder, placed it in his desk drawer, turned off the lamp. He went to bed beside his wife. She was already asleep, or performing sleep, her breathing too even, too controlled. Warren lay on his back in the dark, eyes open, watching the ceiling of the house he'd built with his own hands. He did not sleep. The folder sat on his nightstand like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Warren opened his eyes at 4:52, 8 minutes before his alarm. The bedroom was still dark. Diane lay beside him on her side, one hand tucked beneath her pillow, her breathing slow and deep. Real sleep this time. Whatever performance she'd been managing the night before had given way to genuine unconsciousness. He watched her for 10 seconds, maybe 15. The curve of her shoulder beneath the silk pajama top. The small crease between her eyebrows that appeared when she slept deeply, as though even rest required effort from her. 14 years. Warren rose without sound. His feet found the hardwood floor, and he moved through the dark with the precision of a man who had been navigating structures his entire life, knowing where the weight-bearing points were, where the floor would creak if you stepped wrong. He showered in the guest bathroom down the hall, dressed in his closet with the door closed. Navy slacks, a white button-down, work boots he'd swap for dress shoes if needed. By 5:30, he was in the garage. By 5:32, the Denali was pulling down the oak-lined drive. Diane hadn't stirred. He waited until he hit the beltway before making the call. Philip Okafor picked up on the second ring. No grogginess in his voice, no surprise, just the low, measured tone of a man who was already awake and already thinking. "Warren, I need to ask you some things," Warren said. "Legal things about my finances." A pause. Brief. Then, "Go ahead." "If I wanted to pull records on every joint account Diane has access to, investment accounts, household accounts, anything connected to my name or my social, what am I allowed to touch?" Philip didn't ask why, didn't ask what happened. The absence of those questions told Warren everything about how long his friend had been waiting for this exact phone call. "You're a co-owner on the joint accounts," Philip said. "You have full legal access to any account bearing your name or funded by your income. Investment accounts, where you're the primary, same. If she has sole accounts funded independently, those get more complicated. But anything routed from your earnings, your firm's distributions, your personal holdings, pull it all." "What about an LLC?" Another pause, slightly longer. "Registered where?" "I don't know yet. Virginia, maybe. If your money funded it, directly or through intermediary accounts, you have standing to investigate. If you want to do this properly, you need a forensic accountant working under privilege through my firm. That way, everything stays protected." Warren merged onto 495, the morning still gray around him. "You have someone?" "I have exactly the right person," Philip said. "Her name is Audra James. She's done this kind of work for 15 years. Divorce fraud, asset concealment, threshold evasion. She's seen every version of it. I'll bring her in under my engagement letter so privilege attaches." "How fast?" "I can have her in my office by noon today. Can you get me access to your accounts digitally? Statements, logins, anything Diane wouldn't notice being accessed? I can get you everything. Then get me everything." Philip's voice didn't change pitch, didn't soften, didn't harden. It stayed exactly where it was, flat, competent, ready. "Warren, yeah, you're doing the right thing, and you're doing it the right way." Warren said nothing to that. He hung up, set the phone in the center console, and drove the remaining 20 minutes to the Meridian site in silence. 2 days passed. Warren worked. He checked beam alignments. He reviewed contractor bids for the Bethesda project. He signed off on electrical schematics and took a lunch meeting with a zoning official. He came home at 6:30, kissed Diane's cheek, and ate whatever she'd made or ordered. He asked about her day. She told him about a yoga class, a lunch with a friend named Katrina, a problem with the pool service. He listened, nodded, gave nothing away. On the second night, after Diane went upstairs, Warren sat in his office and opened his laptop. An encrypted email from Philip's firm was waiting. Audra James had attached a preliminary report, 12 pages of account flow, flagged irregularities, and one finding marked urgent. Warren opened the attachment. A Virginia LLC, registered 18 months ago. Entity name, Hargrove Lifestyle Consulting, LLC. Diane's maiden name. The business had no website, no clients, no revenue, no tax filings reflecting income. But it had received 4 wire transfers totaling $214,000 from accounts connected to the shell structure Audra was still tracing. Warren scrolled to the filing document. The registered agent was Diane, and beneath her name, listed as co-registrant and 20% member, Grant Ashby. Warren's hand stopped on the trackpad. His jaw tightened. Just once, just barely, and then released. Grant Ashby, the man who'd sat 2 seats away from him in Advanced Design Studio at Howard, who came from 3 generations of money and still couldn't beat Warren for the Ellsworth Fellowship, who'd shaken Warren's hand at graduation with a smile that never reached his eyes. Warren stared at the name on the screen. The cursor blinked beside it, patient, indifferent. He said nothing. The kitchen smelled like French roast, and something else Warren couldn't name at first. Then he placed it. The orange blossom candle Diane only lit when she wanted the room to feel intentional, curated. Like a set dressed for a scene she'd already rehearsed. He noticed the staging before he noticed her. 2 mugs on the table. The good ones, the handmade ceramic set from that potter in Asheville she'd insisted on buying 3 years ago. Cream already added to his. A small plate of sliced fruit between them, untouched. The morning light through the bay window hit the marble countertop at an angle that made everything look like a magazine spread. Diane sat at the far end of the kitchen